malam ya kalau di Amerika. Monggo ini langsung saja kita bisa mulai. Ini kami menampilkan ada Mbak Ardina Hasanbasri. Terima kasih Mbak atas berkenannya untuk sharing terkait dengan teaching method. Monggo kami persilahkan.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Riman. Saya bisa share screen kan Pak
Monggo,
ya?
monggo.
Um,
Bisa
di,
kayak.
mm, um, dan Bapak Ibu nggak apa-apa ya saya berubah bahasa Inggris bahasa
Nggak
Indonesia
masalah, nggak
karena
masalah. Nggak masalah. Bahasa
kadang
Jawa
apa
juga boleh kok di sini.
aduh saya nggak bisa bahasa Jawa. Saya paling jelek ujian bahasa Jawa pas SMA. Jadi bahasa Indonesia. Um,
Monggo.
okay, okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. As Parimawan and Bu Eni and Pa Gilang has mentioned, it was just a holiday. So the fact that you could have done anything else, but you're here for a teaching workshop, I think it shows at least dedication from your part, because I know all of you are busy and have other things to do. So I really appreciate also the invitation to do this. Let me just say a few things about myself, and then we can kind of start. See if this works. Do you guys see the full screen
Yeah.
or the,
No,
oh,
this
you
is
guys, the other
the
screen?
not the full screen.
Oh, you do, okay, let's do that. Okay, you should see the full screen.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
please.
Okay. Thank you. So let me introduce myself a little bit and kind of explain why this sort of teaching workshop came about. I'm a lecturer at Yale University, and I teach at the Jackson School of Global Affairs. I used to teach at the economics department for 3 years, so I'm a lecturer. So this is the teaching track of the university. And throughout my, so this is my, I guess going to my seventh year teaching, I've taught several courses across the econ discipline. I've taught the very large macro courses and very small macro courses. I've taught econometrics, statistics, data analytics, and development economics as well. I think what's interesting about my experience is like going from Michigan, that's a public school, um, and teaching economics students. I had to switch to Yale teaching global affairs students. And global affairs students, they come from differing backgrounds. So some of them are history, some of them political science, some of them from the business school. And then I was teaching in different levels, so masters and undergrads as well. So throughout all of that experience, I was very surprised with the amount of teaching resources that universities have. Not all universities in the US have this, but some universities have very good teaching centers. And in both universities, I attended multiple teaching workshops, and it was just surprising to me how much my teaching has improved. Was teaching like a class, for example, here at Jackson that everyone rated bad, like even before me, because they hated this required class. And with some of these techniques, I was just surprised how well they work in terms of student learning. And so I was talking to some people from UGM, potentially like I'm curious whether these teaching techniques can be replicated in other contexts, in other classes. So again, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk about some of these methods with you and learn more from your experience as well. So, um, you are all here, so I hope I don't have to motivate you too much. But, as teachers, I'm sure you know that teaching is such a challenging experience in Indonesian universities as well. I know that the teaching load is very, very high. So, with all the work that you have to do, it's just it's just a lot of challenge to to teach the different classes that you do. And we know that students' characteristics and learning behaviors have evolved since COVID. It has evolved. I don't think it's ever gone back. I don't know, maybe you disagree with me if it has gone back or not. Um, and also the skills and human capital needs of the job market is also just changing. So these are the things I'm sure that you know of. And so my goal for this workshop is just sort of two things. So one, I want to discuss some of these pedagogical techniques with you. Um, and also, hopefully, it can make you become more aware of them. My guess is everyone here has a lot of experience, and you guys are experts in your field. Um, you probably are using a lot of them already. It's just that you don't notice them. But if you are more conscious about them, it'll be easier for you and hopefully reduce the teaching burden in the future. And I also think, so one thing that I realized attending multiple teaching workshops at Michigan and Yale is that there sometimes is rarely a space for teachers to just talk with each other about teaching. So right now I am just talking a lot, but I'm hoping throughout this discussion, like please jump in anytime you want. Um, there's so much value in sharing experience, especially maybe for younger instructors who don't know too much about teaching. Younger instructors always have to like reinvent the wheel each time, even though maybe the more senior instructors know how to handle the situation already. Um, so sharing is great, and maybe I can expose you to other ways of creating course material and different techniques as well. So that's sort of the plan for today. Um, let me show you just one stat that I find very interesting. I couldn't find statistics for a university level because I think very few studies are done kind of at this level, but this is for high school students. And I hope you don't mind if I sometimes look that way because there's two screens. Um, so you can see here, 72% of high school teachers say students are distracted by cell phones, but then there's also these different issues in learning that people in the US are facing. Maybe this is different in Indonesia, which would be interesting to discuss. So cell phone is an issue. Showing little to no interest is learning is an issue. I face some of this problem here as well sometimes. Um, I think Indonesian students don't usually get up and when they're not supposed to, so I don't think this is a problem. But then there's also issues of being disrespectful towards teachers. Um, so just to give you a sense of, the how the landscape is sort of here. Um, I think it would be interesting to start if we could just do a poll, like what aspects of teaching do you find most challenging? Um, if you can go to pollev.com, put my name 282. This is a free one. That's why I couldn't change this. But I just want to give you an example of what some of the polling stuff that we do here. But yeah, if you could mention any aspect of teaching you find most challenging, I doubt someone has no challenges at all in teaching. Um, One fun thing about this poll is we could also vote on once responses are coming in, you can start voting as well. Okay, let's see. Is it working or is it not?
Yeah, it is working.
Okay, perfect. Interesting. I haven't seen anything. So, okay, so some is there. Oh, I see. So discussion is discussion. I see discussion.
Is it possible to fill more than one?
Yes, you are able to fill more than one. And I think you can also vote things up and down, and then the list goes changes. I see. So engagement is an issue. Um, so I'm curious, can someone just share kind of how the environment and engagement is in your particular classroom? Um, oops, what did I do? Okay. So does anyone want to share? And I'm just curious. Like why do you think many people think that engagement? So what does engagement in the classroom there looks like?
Yes, if I may start,
Yeah.
the problem is sometimes when we ask student, ask in general, okay, what would happen if this so and so, for instance, and then we
Mm-hmm.
ask them to get, to make their opinion. It's
Mm-hmm.
very hard. It's very
It's
hard.
very hard.
They tend
They're
to,
like
yeah,
they're like silent.
silent on. Although we sometimes I have to mention in the first meeting that you feel free to criticize me and thing like that, and
Mm-hmm.
we will not punish you or anything, and you need to depart from high school regime, for instance. But still, it's not easy. That's
I see.
particularly in Indonesia. Yeah.
I see. I see. Mhm. I mean, honestly, at Yale, it's the same. You would be surprised, but it's actually the same. It's di mana-mana. Um, but I have faced those situations as well, and I don't understand. Um, so I managed to change some things that actually it worked. But let's see, since every situation is different, we'll see if some of the things today will help. Okay, so it's good to know. As in terms of engagement, so next tomorrow's one is about active learning, and I think maybe some of the examples there will help students talk a bit more. Okay, but it seems like discussion and engagement is the issue. Does anyone want to add to what Pariwaman was saying about why do you think engagement is an issue, or are you having similar issues with engagement? Um, or he has summarized it very well. Engagement. That's sort of the issue.
Maybe just a little bit, Ardina. I think I agree
Mm-hmm.
with Pak Rimawan. I think um they haven't kind of released their mentality of high school, where they kind of
Ah,
spoon fed during high school. So getting into the university where even we are told to kind of do the student-centered learning method, but it just
mm-hmm.
doesn't work when your student are not the center. Like they always expect us to
Sure.
be the center. And then like I'm teaching development economics, so for sure there's nothing that unable to be discussed. Like it's all about discussion. And I even
Mm-hmm.
like give participation score for those who just participate, just talk a little bit in the class,
Say
you'll get
hi. Yeah,
participation score. But that's even harder because then only the good students will get most of the
yeah.
scores. And then
Yeah.
when I try to kind of distribute the participation score equally by, randomly asking the
Uh,
non-participating students, and they got stressed. So it's kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
a bit challenging because I was actually trying to distribute the participation score not only to the good ones, because eventually it's only the good ones who got the scores. But
Got
then
it.
the non-participating students, they just want to be silent. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
get those opportunity even if they're given. So it's kind of hard to kind of
Yeah,
actually, make the student, hey, this is an opportunity, not a pressure. So, just whatever comes up in your mind, you just have to, you just have to tell us.
yeah.
There's nothing right or wrong, but that's also hard to kind of get the student to engage, even if we already
Okay.
told them that way.
Okay, no, sounds good. Since there's so much interest in discussion and participation, so there is actually something called, um, you know, techniques and strategies for in how to get inclusive discussion. I was very not, so I didn't know if this would work or not, but I actually did try one of them for one of my class. And I've never done it before, but the teaching center gave me like a list, like you do this, 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 this. So the entire time for 40 minutes, I didn't have to talk. The students were discussing by themselves, like going back and forth. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, how is this possible? So, but I was in a situation, the same situation is for you, as you, like the year before, where nobody wanted to discuss. And I didn't know like what was going on. So I will tell you kind of what happened maybe when we get to engagement sort of tomorrow. But okay, great. I just wanted to get sort of a sense of the type of challenges that you guys are facing, um, to maybe cater so we can sort of cater sort of the workshop based on sort of your needs. But good. Um, so in each of my slides, I do have sort of resources for you if you do want to know more. So this workshop, a lot of the material, at least this session, comes from this book called How Learning Works. And from that book, I sort of pick and choose some techniques where I have examples of doing them in my own class. And maybe you will have examples, because again, I think sometimes you do this subconsciously, but you just didn't know. Um, and then I list other resources there if you're interested as well. So Teach Better podcast is a really interesting podcast, um, hosted by two professors, one at Yale and I think one from another university. And they have discussions with other professors, including econ professors, about teaching and other disciplines as well. The Journal of Economics Education has a lot of different case studies, or articles, material on teaching. I've used one before for one of my class. So that's also another thing that's interesting. And then this is the strategy of teaching from Yale University and University of Michigan, if you are interested. But okay, let's kind of delve into the session for today. I want to just show you what the pedagogical research says about two things. So one has to do with student motivation and learning, and the second one has to do with, maybe you did manage to get students motivated. You have a really great example for them. They're engaged, but then you give them an exercise or a question, and then they're silent, or they just didn't answer the question correctly. And so something that I found very interesting about the way a student learn has to do with how their prior knowledge and their knowledge organization kind of helps them learn. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And again, these concepts are based on research from Western countries. It's very possible that it's not, some of these are not good fit. If you think there are issues, just let me know, or we can discuss it as a group. But I just want to let you know, like, all of this is up for discussion. Hopefully, I'm just exposing you to some of these concepts and we can think about them on whether they work or not. So I'll give you some key concepts. They're very intuitive. They're not like heavy. Economics is much heavier than this. I'll give you examples and I'll give you time to also think a little bit about whether this works for your class. And you can share your own examples as well in the end. So the first topic that I wanted to cover has to do with increasing student motivation. And just so that we can talk about motivation in concrete terms, the pedagogical research has kind of a definition for what motivation is. So motivation is the investment that students put into achieving a desired outcome. So they have to do something and then they want to do something and they're putting the effort. Um, so, sometimes we are not able to get our students engaged, or we get an assignment back and that's not giving us sort of the best. I don't know, we were just a little bit disappointed with the results of the assignment. Some of these could be issues with motivation, like they just don't want to put enough work. Or in terms of engagement, they don't want to think hard enough to kind of engage, right? And of course, there's a lot of different scenarios why some students are suddenly engaged or not. And so we need like a framework to think about, like, how can we influence sort of engagement? So I'm going to give you an example of my class problems. And then I'm going to define a framework of how to think about motivation. Okay. So one of the classes that I'm teaching at Jackson, it's called Approaches to International Development. It's an economic development class for Jackson students. So in the US, we do have like teaching evaluations. So you get to see how the class rates the teacher and rates the class overall, like historically. So 1 is bad and 5 is good. So this class, before I came, already had a lot of students ranking it like the average is bad. It's not like the lowest score is bad, the average is bad. So out of 50 students, people say it's a bad class. It has a very bad reputation. And part of the reason why it has a bad reputation is it's a required class. So it's a required class for people who don't want to do econ, for people who don't like math. And it was just like, so I was teaching this class and I just came from an economics department and, teaching it the same way as I would teach it in an economics department, which I had good evaluations when I was in Michigan. But then when this class hit, it was just like, they really hated whatever you do. I was just so surprised. So it bring me to this question of motivation. Like when they come in the morning, they don't want to talk to each other. They don't want to talk to me. They, everybody said like, oh, we just have to take this class because we have to take this class. And the motivation was just so very bad. So so this made me kind of think a little bit like I really have to restructure this class to get motivation up, right? So a required class, subject to something the student hates. And also students don't know what the purpose of the class is. So in the evaluations, they would say like, we don't know, so the evaluation asks, what did you learn from this class? And a lot of students would say, I learned nothing. And it's just so heartbreaking breaking as an instructor because like I taught you so many lectures. I don't know what you're saying. But you realize there's just such a disconnect between that class and the students. Okay, so what does the pedagogical research say about student motivation? So they have sort of this framework that looks at 3 things, right? Goals, values, and expectancies. They have like this chart. It's very not econ because this is like education research. So goals are what students strive for. We know what goals are. Values are what are the kind of the values that students put into achieving a particular goal, or it can help students choose which goal to kind of pursue. And then we have something called expectancy, which is do they believe that they can achieve the goal, right? So if you can get these three things to be aligned, like their values and expectancy to be aligned, it could drive their motivation, get their goal-directed behavior and support learning performance. That's what the education research says. Let's be a little bit more specific about what I mean by goals, right? There's actually different types of goals. And it's also important to know that your goal as a teacher can be very different from the student's goal, right? A student can have a couple of goals, such as there might be a performance goal. So this is the student that just really cares about, projecting a good reputation, being seen as smart. Like they would do anything that the teacher sort of requires to kind of, I don't know, get that grade, get that teacher's approval. But it's not necessarily learning based. It's more kind of, they're really motivated by these reputation effects. So there's performance goals. There are learning goals. And I think as teachers, this typically is what we would like, right? To gain competence and truly learn what an activity or task can teach them. There's work avoidant goals, which is do the minimum amount of work needed to get a grade. I don't know. I'm sure people here have seen this type of student before, I think. There is affective goal. Sometimes you just like to be engaged in stimulating activity. And there's so many different goals that I probably don't have here. Like maybe their goal is to make friends. I don't know. Maybe their goal for KKN is get a wife or something or a husband. There's social goals. There's different, maybe your goal for a particular career is different. So you have to realize that the students themselves have goals. For my class, because this was a required class, my goal of them learning was just not the same goal that they have. They don't view this class as something that they were going to learn from, unfortunately. But okay, there's also, so because there's multiple types of goals, students are going to choose what they're going after depending on the values that they have, right? So there's attainment value, like the satisfaction that you get if you achieve like a goal or a mastery of a subject. If you have a class where maybe the grades are not really connected to sort of the assessment, or there's some disconnect there for some reason, it's not connected too much with hard work, then they might not put too much attainment value to the grades that you have, right? Sometimes there's intrinsic value. There are some students who really like doing schoolwork. Maybe you guys are also those type of students, because you guys are the smartest students who became professors. So they are very happy just to do a task. And then there's sort of instrumental value. So if they can finish this activity, they can go do it go to like the next thing, right? So my class, in a sense, I mean, it is there's an instrumental value for my class because you need it to get the degree, but a lot of people don't find the class valuable, so they end up kind of do the minimum amount of work needed type of students. Okay, so those are two things. There's also another important thing, which is expectancies and learning behavior. To be motivated to pursue a specific goal, students must hold positive outcome expectancies. And what I mean by positive outcome expectancies, oh, and sorry, is there a question? Or is just the mic is on? Okay, good. Sorry. If you do have a question, like just raise your hand or put it on the chat and we can talk a bit. But this expectancies is sort of, you have to believe that you can achieve the goal. Otherwise, you're gonna not want to put in any effort. So in my class, I teach them how to do coding in R and do a lot of data analytics and development economics. When I first did this class, so by the way, there is a happy ending for this class because last year, finally the students were like from a reputation. So like the average was like a 2 for this class, it went up by like 1.5, and the average become like this is like a good class um, from one semester to the next. And I did not change my material, but I changed the way I present the material to them. And it made a huge difference and changed the teaching experience. But anyway, in my class, I had this issue of expectancies as well. So when I give students a code, they think, oh, this is hard. I can't do this anyway. I'm not going to do anything. So then they didn't even try. And when I first started this, I was confused. Like, if you can't do it, try. You know, I think as instructors, we're thinking if you can't do it, go to office hours, go to the TA, go to um, read online what to do. But in this case, the students shut down. And maybe the only reason I know that this was happening was because I had a student who I kind of mata-mata with the other students. And she gave me feedback and saying like, this is actually happening. Like, how can we get the students to be able to like try or believe that they can try? So those are kind of the three things, values, goals, and sort of expectancies. Let me stop here a little bit. Are there any questions about these things, or do you have any like, I don't know, stories of your own that you want to share of how one of these might be an issue in your class, or if you found a way to solve it when it was an issue in your class? If not, it's okay too. I'm gonna give us a bit more time in like one or two slides to sort of discuss. But let me just tell you a story first of like what did I do for this terrible, terrible class experience. Um, and the others teachers knew. They didn't tell me, and they just like throw me to the wolves of this class. But it was a great experience at the end. Um, so there are ways to, so there's the goals, values, and expectancies. So somehow I have to change students' values. I have to, well, somehow try to change their values, make them believe that this class is actually important. Um, and again, this is not econ students. Some of them are econ students, but a lot of them like do not like economics. There's a reason why they don't major in economics. They major in global affairs. But I have to change their values. So here's some strategies. So students ask the question like, why am I learning this material? The easiest thing that you can do, and again, some of you do this already, like you want to connect the material to students' interest. You want to provide authentic real world task. You have to demonstrate the relevance of higher level skills to students' academic lives and future personal lives, right? And then you have to identify and reward what you value. It seems very simple, and it's also what students ask all the time, right? In faculty meetings at Yale, like we had the president of the university came in, and the faculty always want to talk about different things, but the president told us, the students really want you guys to talk about the curriculum. They want to understand why they're learning all this stuff. Why are all the things required? Like they don't understand. And I think that's why we're having a lot of difficulties in class. Um, so for my class, um, what I did for this was I had to sort of kind of, so I did a couple of things. First, you know how in economics classes or development economics classes, we can tell a short story and then just start right away with the model and then blah, 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 do math. And then that typically works because students are already motivated. These students are motivated by, they want to find a type of career in development economics or the multilateral universities, or they want to work in cross-country stuff. So I had to tell them, look, you need some of these skills because, um, so you need some of these skills because so one of the skills that I tell them is you need to be able to do a policy report. And then I give them an actual policy report from like the World Bank that I was working on. And I say, what if I tell you that by the end of this semester, you're gonna create something just like this? And I'm not lying because I take an example from a previous class. A previous class did this report and they made this graph and they did not know R at all. This sounds simple with me saying this, um, but the act of me saying this does two things. Like one, they realize like, oh, that's kind of a goal that is interesting and seem useful for my future career. Two, it was very important for me to say the students who made this graph or policy report did not know any coding at all. Because when they hear that, they said, oh, I don't know any coding at all. I can achieve that, right? Um, and to also kind of, I mean, there's no causal proof of this, but I have students that came to my office and they said, um, so the student said, I didn't have any R background, but then you said that it's okay not having R background and that you will help and it's okay to have errors. And he said that helped a lot. And I'm like, yes,
Mm.
perfect. Like, you know, they need to have positive expectancies, right?
Okay.
And so um, I will actually show you other pieces of what's happening in the class. Do I have it in my I don't have it. I'll show you a bit later of what happened in that class. Um, so for every topic, I have to make a data assignment that is related to a debate that the students care about, but also introduce things one thing at a time. Um, and only then they're starting to like, okay, I can do this. I can work this through. Um, and that was it. Like my material is the same, but I kind of just be very explicit with you. If you guys can do this, there's so much
Mm.
value in doing that. I don't know what. Let me give you like 2 minutes to sort of think a little bit, and then I kind of again, this is a forum where we can discuss things that work and things that don't work. So I would be very interested to hear like your stories of what worked, um, or what didn't work, or if you have any examples of these strategies. Okay, so let's give you 2 minutes, and then let's see if we can have a couple of volunteers to share their experience. And it's okay to speak in Indonesian or English.
Okay. But if I may to share,
Sure, go ahead.
yeah. Usually we have like a 14 session in UGM, and usually I spend the first meeting. I on purpose. I sacrifice one meeting basically to talk to student about the Bloom's taxonomy and compare and contrast and think the originality in thinking. But I think based on my reflection after I heard from you, I less put emphasis on the goal, on or the purpose of learning. I tend to talk about the method, on the strategies, but less a purpose. I think I can see the novelty that you mentioned about the goal, talking about the goal in the first place, or the purpose, and then talking about the probably in the future I will try to put more emphasis on the goal. That's what I'm thinking about.
Oh yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And it's actually really cool that you explain Bloom's taxonomy to your students. it's such an important, I mean, I have it in my slide for tomorrow too. It's, or maybe in the next section. It's so important. But again, our learning goal, we as instructors, I think, have an idea of learning is important, creative, critical thinking is important, writing is important. But students have so many interests right now, you know. Um, so we do have to kind of think about their goals. Yeah, I don't, maybe it's a good thing for us as teachers, but it's just, yeah. Um, anyone else would like to share about an example that you've done or um, just any thoughts or reflection?
May I?
Yes,
Mbak
please.
Ardina,
Yeah.
so I'm part of the older generation, so I have to say, because I've been having a reputation that kind of my class is difficult, and then there is one time during the COVID, then I had a class that they are frustrated with my class because at that time I was delivering econometrics too.
Oh,
But
yes.
then but then they got frustrated and they thought that I'm talking like alien, but it turned out that they missed the basic of econometric ones. So for
Got
that,
it.
at that time, then I spent about 3-4 weeks. Then I do tutorial, bringing them back with this econometrics foundation, the econometrics one. Then by this, then they get they can connect what my class, my econometrics 2 class with the econometrics one. And with this, then it helps them to see, oh, I see, this is the points, that because they missed the basic. And then
Yes.
after that, I learned that my students in most cases they miss the basic. So just like connecting between one course with the other course, that might be a problem. And then when I teach class, let's say last semester I teach macroeconomics, and then I said to them this: look, now the gold standard is that we use R or Python. Then I give them flavor, but R. But so this might be too hard for you. But then let's learn something. The alternative. We can choose whichever you want to take the gear. Then I teach them if you use this is easier, but this is not the industry use. But there is industry in Indonesia that still use this one. It's called Bank Indonesia and OJK. So if you use this one, you can still use this for your work. But with others, maybe they look this down based on the if use. But then I teach them both, like switching between R and if use. This is how we do it in R, how we do it in if use. So by this, then also by this, then I always, because last semester I did macroeconomics, I always bring, this is how the macroeconomics thing, this is how we see our Indonesian issues, this is about, how the global, this is the makers making, making decision, they make decision based on data. But by this, they have interest to take my class, because everyone knows that my class is hard. So, but then I also I changed for, I don't know, maybe the last 5 years, I changed the student marking by putting my exam only taking 50%, and the other 50% is that like group works, student assignment, quiz, pop quiz, and I also put these like bonus if they are active in the presentation, because my 14 weeks class I have only this 12 course delivery, but then the other two is it is the time for them to make their presentation about the chosen topics, and we give them the guideline how to make the presentation. So by this it works. Yeah, still some students still thinking that they are, maybe they lose track, they lose interest, but the others, they say, oh, this is class. And then I think I feel good, because other students from other classes that, look, can I just sit in this class? And yeah, with pressure. So they start coming other students from other class as sitting, because they see, oh, this is maybe the other way to approach the case. But this is just sharing, because I'm just part of the zombie group of people, They thank you.
Yeah,
Just
no,
sharing.
I
Thank you.
no, thank you for sharing. You actually, I mean, you're using a lot of the techniques in terms of providing them real world tasks that, again, that sharing that this is what the bankers do, like it does give them a little bit more motivation and affects their careers. I also like that your point on prior knowledge is such a big thing, and my next point to share is also about prior knowledge. But Pak Gilang, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ardina, for sharing these important points. I just a couple of things. The first one is about the positive expectancies, and I've been trying to do several not experiments, but several, I would say, like you know efforts to create these positive expectancies among students beyond just grade. So one of the things I worry about among our students is that they very much care about the grade, which is a good thing. But at the same time, I think they should look beyond the grades. It's about the learning, the competencies that they would achieve by the end of the course, and some of the wonderful things that they can explore during the course. So I'm trying to have a discussion with students at the start of the class so that they can have a different expectancies beyond just grade. I think that's one of the important things that I do at the start of the course. And then the second thing is to create or to establish these values. What I do, particularly in my economics of education course, is to share some of the I would say current issues in Indonesia. So, for example, this year is going to be about some of the priority programs by the new presidency, by the new presidents. But at the same time, I would like to request them to read a particular passage in, say, a World Bank report on education in Indonesia. And by having these opportunities, I believe that the students have better understanding on what they can actually achieve given the tools and knowledge and theories that they can in the course. So I think that's one of the things that I'd like to share. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That's actually wonderful. I've never had that. So Yale, the grade inflation at Yale is like insane. That I mean, I feel you about how do we get students motivated, and then it's not just on the grades. I don't have any answers. I also am trying to experiment with that, but that's a good idea to just discuss it with the class. I'm curious to hear what your students say, but let me just move on so that I could finish and then we can have a discussion again kind of at the end. I just want to share two other things with you. And it has to do a little bit with what Bagus said about prior knowledge. So actually, there's a lot of research about these connections that students make while they're learning. And when the connection is not, I don't know, if it's broken in any way or things don't connect, like you're not going to get the learning to happen. So what do we know about? So this is what people know about prior knowledge. Students must connect new knowledge to previous knowledge in order to learn. And prior knowledge needs to be activated, because if it's not activated, this is again when you ask a question in class and nobody, depends on the situation. Sometimes they don't answer you because they don't know what's going on. Maybe in Pak Bagus's situation, like he gives them a review so that they could activate their knowledge again, and so then it works. But I've also been in situation where I taught something and I say, you guys did this in econ. They forget everything, and things don't sort of work out. So prior knowledge is important. It has to be activated in some way, but then inappropriate prior knowledge can really affect negatively the learning experience. Hopefully you don't experience this because you're teaching econ majors, so I think they should know more about the econ field, but when I was teaching my development class, people think development is the World Bank. And when I teach them all this econ models, they were like, she hasn't talked about the World Bank. She doesn't talk about financial aid. She's not teaching us development. And I have been getting that comment multiple times. So this was an example of the students coming from the global affairs majors do not know what development is at all. Like, I've never had this experience before. So I actually end up, like Pak Bagus, having to create like 2 classes just talking about what development is and why is it a field. And that actually has helped my class a lot. There's multiple ways that you can figure out if prior knowledge is missing. You can talk to colleagues, you can administer a diagnostic test, you can talk to the students. One thing that people have also tried that might be helpful is sort of have students brainstorm, and sometimes they can brainstorm in a group or make a concept maps, or you can look for errors in like students' work. So I was looking at evaluations, and kind of this is sort of a pattern that sort of came up, right? So once you sort of identify that gap, you can start completing kind of that gap, right? Okay, now, second thing about knowledge has to do with knowledge organization. So let's say that there are 2 students, okay? Let's say once you ask a student, there's a very historic event, I don't know, let's just make something up. I don't know, let's say country X got their economic independence in what year, let's say. So student 1 answered, let's just say Indonesia, 1945, okay? He got it correct. Student 2 answered 1946, for example. I mean, you're not supposed to get this wrong, but just as example, just as an example, we think that student A probably is smarter than B sometimes in this situation. But if you ask the students, like, how do you get that number, 1945? Student A said, well, I memorize it. I didn't know, it just pops up. So it's 1945. They didn't give you any other reason or any other knowledge behind that answer. But student B, they said 1946. They said, well, I forgot the year, but this event is closely connected to this event that happened during this time, which may be connected to another event. So I don't know exactly the year, but it's somewhere there. After hearing that answer, you realize, I think student B has the better knowledge base, because when they're thinking of an answer, many things sort of pop up, like they connect that knowledge to something, versus the student who is like rote memorization. Like, this is the answer because I studied it in my textbook, but it's going to disappear in like 2 years when I forget. So the goal as teachers is you want to be able to give them that concept map, or having them build their concept map, right? So students' B way of thinking is actually much closer to expert way of connecting information. Like, you have economic concepts that are connecting in a certain way. So the figure that you see in front of you, so this is figure 2.2, this is examples of knowledge organization. Can someone give me, I didn't put a poll here, but can you guess which one would be, belongs to like an expert knowledge organization?
Is it the A?
Do you think it's A? So Pak Gilang says A. We should poll this, but I haven't. But why do you think it's A, Pak Gilang?
Because they're experts and they don't need a particular structure, I guess.
Okay. But what's the difference between A and D?
D is still connected to each other. There is some sense of say, line of coordination, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
But then in
Mm-hmm.
A, it's kind of like chaos in some sense, and you need an expert to navigate things in that particular order.
Okay, so you are correct in a sense that as an expert, you are able to navigate the chaos. Does someone have a different opinion, or I could jump in?
Yeah, I prefer C. That's like the
Okay.
mind map thinking. This is
Mm-hmm.
what normally I persuade my students. Look, so you have to structure this to be linearized things. So don't make
Ah,
it complex. Just make it, everything look.
oh, linear.
Look,
Mm-hmm.
we have to linearize, complex things to be linearized. That helps you to understand the worlds better. Just then I
Mm-hmm.
persuade them to use like this kind of similar to mind mapping things.
Yeah, yeah. So which linear one do you like better, I guess? So do you like C better then, I think?
Yeah, I would prefer C. That's
Mm-hmm.
you need to know what is the, you need to see what is the branch, what is the most important, what is the what is it, the subset of
Mm-hmm.
everything. So you structure them.
Mm-hmm.
That's make the mind is easier.
Okay.
Me is
Okay.
D.
Yeah. Wisnu said D. Do you want to say why you chose D?
Yeah,
Probably Mas Wisnu.
I cannot turn on my camera. I was like doing something else. Sorry, but D is like the one that show like how the knowledge is actually interconnected and deeply structured in a ways. And then it's like how expert actually doing like from the fractal knowledge and structure, they actually can make a connection, as I mentioned before, on the story of 1945 Indonesia. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the ABC is like the novice way to learn knowledge, where you can like just groupings, you can just make a structure, but then not really can see the connection between the top and then the bottom, something like that.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. So the answer in the book the answer in the book is that so A and B are more novices and C and D are more tend to be more experts. So here's the difference. So B is a so B is the easiest one, right? As a student, sometimes you kind of learn like even when you make outlines, sometimes it's this and then this and then this and then this is or history, it's just like a straight line. Um, but the problem is knowledge is typically not that way, right? I don't know. Inflation, there's so many things that affect inflation. Um, there's multiple ways to sort of connect things with other terminologies. Um, but one thing that I want to mention is think about when B happens, and let's say a student is missing like a key information, like titik yang di tengah hilang, like you can get something like A, right? You get information that is scattered and you don't know how to connect them to each other. Um, so what Pak Gilang said was actually correct in terms of, well, you have scattered knowledge, except that an expert knows how to connect everything in some way. Um, but when students have these scattered knowledge, this is a potential reason why they can't answer your question of of you ask them a question, if they have and Pak Rimawan was mentioning about Bloom's taxonomy, if they are still in sort of that basic level of information, and things are just still describing or memorization, and if you ask a discussion question, yang asked like, so if this is the case, like how do you recommend the government do something for policy X or something? They're not going to be able to answer because, again, they don't know how to make the connection. So understanding what type of knowledge structure your student have is very important before asking a question. And also helping your students to build some of these knowledge structures is important as well. So one thing that I kind of did, so again, like as Pak Bagus has mentioned, like making concept maps really helps. provide students with outlines of a sort of a structures, explicitly share why you organize your knowledge in a particular way really helps. So this is something that I do for my class. This is a concept map. And again, there's so many different ways to make concept maps. This is just one way to do it. I also use this as an anchoring slide. So what do I mean by anchoring slide? So when I go to another I actually highlight different portions as I go on the slide. And so I used the same lecture in 2 semesters, one with a concept map and one without a concept map. And in another one, I also tweaked a little bit. But I was surprised that the students just get it. Like they understand where I'm going, and so they are trying to make the connections. If you think about, I don't know, maybe your own experience during your PhD or your master's or even undergrad, and the professor just goes and then starts, and then you're like, oh, I have to pay attention and put this, but you don't know where to put it where, right? So during lecture, you're just trying to figure out, okay, this is information that I'm getting, but wait, how does this connect to everything I don't know? And that's actually what makes sometimes the lecture very difficult, um, because they can't make the connection. So if you can help them in some way make these connections, it's actually really helpful. I don't know if this makes sense at all. It might look like a mess, but this was my lecture on randomized control trials. So I first start with why we care about impact evaluations. Who are the stakeholders you care about impact evaluations? So an example method is randomized control trial. If you can figure this out, you can have debates about RCTs and how to use it in policymaking. But before we get to the debates, we need to understand the potential outcome model. We're gonna learn using a case study. Here's an exercise of calculating the simple difference in outcome. Here's an exercise, calculate the ATE. And this is why, and then why we need the randomization. So something simple, and this could be however you want to do. And again, because the students know where they are and where they're going, I was just surprised that they get it. Like the first time I did this, like I did this, and then there's also professors in the audience. The professors get it, like, oh, we like this material, this is fun. But some of the students, they're like, just like, again, these are not econ students and they hate math. So I show them basic math, they just really hate it. But the second time I did it, they were like, oh, this is so interesting. Like I think it's just because they're able to make the connection. So yeah, we have sort of 7 minutes left, and I kind of showed you a couple of things. I just want to spend some time to sort of reflect, and um, if anyone wants to share thoughts in terms of concept maps or prior knowledge, like, do you have examples where you realize, oh, this prior knowledge is missing, I need to do something, like the example that Pak Bagus have? Or if you have examples of concept maps in your class, or if you have another idea of how to make students think better, would be happy to hear some. So let me give you 2 minutes to sort of think.
Yeah, this is the prior, as you mentioned about the prior knowledge that I always miss. I haven't thought in that way. I think I need to know more about what is their prior knowledge, and then we need to discuss where we are going to go. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing.
Maybe I would
Mbak
like
Kisha?
to share as well, Ardina, because I'm okay. So I usually teach the Statistics 1, which is for the first semester students, consists of also non-economic students and also development economics for only economic students, but in the third semester. So I see like what you just mentioned is very connected to mine. Like I can actually relate to your discussions because for the Statistics 1 students, I think you're right. Like it's important like to build their positive expectations because most of them or not all of them are econ students. And so they need to know, why should I learn statistics if I'm an accounting student? Like, why should I bother, learning all these formulas if I'm going to be a manager because I'm a manager from a management department. So yeah, I actually I wasn't really aware of that expectations thing, but then I started to kind of explain. I think the first meeting is very important, like to set their expectations and to build their motivation. Okay, even if you're gonna be an accountant, this is why you need to learn this subject, or this is why the faculty made this subject compulsory for all department. I think well, even eventually there are students who just want to be the bare minimum achiever. Like even like in the group project, some of them are a free rider, but at least like we give them some insights, like there's a reason why this subject is compulsory for all department. Otherwise we'll just make it for econ students or maybe a management student. So I think the first meeting of kind of building their expectations or students' expectations and build their positive motivation. At least we get an additional student who's from bare minimum achiever becoming more towards performance achiever. But yeah, I think communicating that in the first meeting is very important. Although I think I still need to learn from this workshop how to kind of build that positive motivation better, especially for the non-econ student who should take the econ subjects such as Statistics 1. And then for the development economics class, I relate to your point how students kind of hard to kind of connect things, because in econ students, I no longer teaching the basic GDP formula. You should have got that in your introduction of economics, or the basic IC and budget line that is in the micro. This is an applied course where you should have been able to connect things to both micro and macro, because basically our textbooks are covering both micro and macro. And you're right, like when students aren't able to kind of connect what they previously learned, they're just silent. And for me, it's kind of hard because it's not the purpose of my class to teach the basic IC function and budget line function. That's what you should have learned before. And we applied it in here. Like we learned one of the things is the demand for children, and the demand for children has that IC curve and budget line curve. And those students who aren't able to connect, or maybe in the previous course, they just the bare minimum students who just want to pass the course, they kind of lost it in the sense that they cannot connect how things works and unable to kind of make the final goal of my course, which is making discuss about the policy. So so what I did in the second year I teach development is to make that kind of roadmap kind of thing, like to show them how development economics 1 will be related to development economics 2, and how the things that I'm teaching here is kind of connected to the learning goals and competency goals that being set by the faculty, and how every assignment is actually related to that learning goals. For example, one of the learning goals is the students are able to make policy recommendation, or students are able to exercise, sorry, I forgot, like speaking skills. One of the learning goals, students demonstrate the ability to formulate appropriate research questions. So I kind of use that point of learning goals. Hey, I want to achieve, like we must achieve, like I use like the faculty's or the department set of learning goals and competency goals as my shield. Like, hey, this is what we have to achieve. I'm being told that we have to achieve this. So in order to achieve this, for you to be able to formulate the research questions, this is what we're gonna do, like in our assignment. And yeah, and then that's something that I need to kind of deliver in the first meeting so that everyone was kind of on board. This is not a course where I will teach you the basic micro, because we need to formulate the research questions. Now you have to apply the basics. So please do read or re-study your basic micro and macro, because we're gonna have like to connect things in this class. So yeah, well, again, it's just like a rough things that I tried to figure out myself, like how to
that's good.
put students stay in focus, like, because we have development economics 1 and 2. And again, I do not want, like, because I'm going to meet them again in development economics 2, and they're going to forget everything from development economics 1. And before that happened, then yeah, I showed them the roadmap. But then again, I don't know like how to kind of other than asking them to relearn it themselves, because they have to connect things in my class. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right about how students are kind of just take it for granted each course without making that connection. So I think it's very important for like maybe us in here to kind of start telling students how every course is actually connected to the others and achieving that high level skills.
Yeah. Sorry. And it is hard. No, thank you for sharing a couple of things. Like one of your comments actually fits very well with the next section, because I'm going to talk about backward design, and what you were explaining is exactly the backward design type of a way to create course design, like from the learning goals to the assessment. I have I had kind of two comments, but I also want to give people like time to breathe before we get to the next section. But one other comment that I found that I have found useful. Oh, I remember my two comments. So one, remember that knowledge has to be activated. It is possible that it is there somewhere, their background, but it kind of needs to be activated in a way. And you need to kind of start in a very low key way. So one thing that I've tried to do is, because every time I say I start solo growth model, if I do everything again, they hate me because they don't want to study this again. But then if I don't do solo growth model, we can't talk about growth accounting. So I just asked them in a word cloud, like no pressure, like what words pop up in your mind if I say solo growth model? And then some are going to start saying things that are correct and incorrect. And so words. So a lot more people participate because, again, there's no right answer because you just have to share a word. But from there, you can start realizing like, oh, they remember diminishing returns to scale. Oh, they remember the steady state. And then you start talking about it again. And so that's kind of an easy way to see how much they remember and then start activating some of the prior knowledge and tell them how it's connected. And then you don't have to review everything. But a simple tip. The second thing that I want to say, like a lot of these techniques, remember that teaching is very challenging. It takes a lot of time to try one technique. So I just also want to tell everyone, like, I'm sharing a lot of tips, but depending on, time constraints and, testing things, like it takes time. So it's a work in progress. So, but I'm very, it's very inspiring to hear from all the teachers and sharing all their knowledge and how they've tried to make their course a bit better. Okay, so I want to give us sort of a break and me a break so that I can shift to like the next lecture. But so let's do a 12-minute break and then meet again at 9:30. That sounds good.
Okay.
Great, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going, yeah. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So while we wait, if anyone wants to put in the full poll, we can do that while we wait. Okay. So hi everyone. Should I start or should we wait a couple of minutes? How are we feeling in terms of
Please do.
this? So should we start?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, I have a poll up, um, which you can agree with your colleagues or add a new thing. So which part of the course planning process do you find challenging? Assessment, um, learning goals and learning outcomes. One thing I'm impressed with the Indonesian syllabi that that Kisha has sent me and UGM has sent me is that they are very concrete with the learning goals and learning outcomes. So at least in Yale syllabi, especially in econ syllabi, we don't have learning goals and learning outcomes in our syllabi. And
Because
so students,
we participated in ASASP, so we need to
oh,
identify the learning goals and
oh,
learning objective,
I see.
and
I see.
they are very demanding on those points.
I see. I see. So by is it up to the instructor or as a department you have to decide on the learning goals?
In the
The
department level and
Yeah.
study program level.
Yeah.
I see. I see. I see. But no, it's impressive because we don't do that. I think maybe we should do more of that.
Well, I
But
think because in the old days we cannot join the ASASP because it stated clearly
without it,
that we should be excluded.
have
The
to.
economics should be excluded. But after 2020 measures, they changed from rule-based to principle-based. Then they allow us to join, including the statistics and also econometrics. That's why we participated. Start in 2021, and we obtained the accreditation in 2024.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. So the idea of learning goals is gonna come up in today. So but Kisa mentioned at the end of the last workshop on how do you course design around learning goals? That's something that it's not the only way, but a lot of pedagogical research is sort of kind of pushing towards that direction. So that's called backward design. And I see here that which part of the course planning process do you find challenging, achieving that learning goal and creating case studies and assignments based on that learning goal? Assessment, and also the load of assignment. True. I do read like the learning goals that some of the syllabi have. It is a lot for one class, but I'm also kind of the same way. I want my students to do a lot in my class, but sometimes I just manage to really focus on the graph. So then they have beautiful graphs, but then they have bad writing. But then if I do the writing, they don't have as good graphs. So it's difficult to achieve like all those learning goals. But okay, maybe we can discuss some of these things. And I'm very interested to hear from your experience as well, the type of assignments that you have, and I'm sure your peers also would be interested. I've been trying to design assignments that are very applied focus. Happy to share them as well if any of you are interested. And there's a lot of resources on different types of assignments and case studies. But okay, so I wasn't sure if people are going to go in and out of these sessions, so I have the workshop goal stated here again. So teaching is challenging, so we're trying to sort of learn these techniques and maybe bit by bit try to use more or be conscious of the ones that we've used. And if you've used a lot in the past, now at least you're realizing like, oh, it's really good that I'm doing this. It's really good that I'm doing that. The material for this session is mostly coming from the Yale Purview Center resource on course planning. They have a lot more there. I'm just choosing a couple that I have examples for. And again, I also am taking some small material from How Learning Works. So this How Learning Works is really just the classic pedagogical research books. It takes all the research in pedagogy and put it in like a very simple language for instructors who wants to use them. We're going to talk a bit about backward design. This is sort of a writing on backward design, but I really like this paragraph because I used to be one of those teachers. And for some classes, I still do. So it says there, it's easy to switch into automatic pilot mode when it comes to planning a course. You know, it goes something like this. We look at the topic of the course we're assigned to teach. We select enough essential, canonical, anti-canonical reading material to fill out 15 weeks or so. And then we plot that reading into a calendar. So that's sort of the syllabus. But again, I was impressed that, you know, that the department has learning goals in their syllabi, UGM. So I was like, okay, that's good. So maybe they're not doing this type of course design. Actually, a lot of, even at the graduate level, a lot of our faculty also has this type of course design, and then they fix it bit by bit. But again, there's other ways to do course design, and I've been trying to do a bit more of what Mbak Kisha was doing, which is that backward design, right? So I want to talk a little bit about one, just maybe we should have I don't know, because you talk a lot about learning goals. I don't know how useful this session is for you. We can go straight to backward design, but maybe I'll just mention a little bit. And I want to hear kind of your ideas of what you think of the learning goals that you have. Yeah, and so again, let's see what you already know about the topic, discuss some concepts, look at some examples, and share your experiences. So learning goals and learning outcomes. So those are two different things, and I think you have both in the syllabi. Learning outcomes, I'm focused more on learning outcomes instead of learning goals here in this session. Define as a particular knowledge, skills, and abilities that an instructor intends for students to learn or develop, right? I'll give you some examples from other courses. I don't know, maybe you find interesting. This is an example from a humanities course, so an American history. The learning goal is students will develop a broader knowledge of American history, so it's very broad. But then if you look at the learning outcomes, a student will be able to describe colonization of the French Americas by the British, French, and Spanish. Students will be able to analyze the outcomes of the Civil War. I'm going to give you another one. This is a STEM one. This is an independent study in chemistry. Students will develop discipline-specific research skills. That's very broad. sample learning outcomes. Students will be able to design a controlled experiment, collect data, and analyze research, able to disseminate research finding in written form, and verbally present research findings. So something similar to kind of what you have. I also kind of took this from, because Mbak Kisha was kind enough to share like the learning goals from like a development class that you have. So just, open discussion. I don't know, what do you think about sort of the different learning goals that you have? Is it helpful for you? Is it less concrete? Or you have no issue with them at all? It's more about execution. Thoughts? Or it's just there, so we have to do them. I don't know. Yes, Pak Gilang.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the most difficult part is to ensure that the learning outcomes and the learning goals are achieved at the end of the semester. But I do sometimes ask whether the end of the semester is a good it's a good time to evaluate that. That's probably the only time for us as the instructor for that class. But for some particular learning outcomes, it's a combination not only in that particular course, but also for from other 2 courses or 3 courses or other courses taught in that
Got it.
semester. And so, it begs questions whether it should be assessed at another time as well. But at the end of the day, a learning outcomes and a learning goal from a particular course ties to the competency goals from one particular study program. So that needs to be taken into account as well. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Other thoughts? And I actually have a question. Well, I don't know. It's just so interesting that you do have the learning outcomes and I guess the competencies that you want to build.
Yeah.
Do you have a way to evaluate kind of at the end if the competencies are met?
Yeah, we do have a system called the Assurance of Learning, AOL. So it provides the opportunity for the study programs as well as as in particular to evaluate that on a regular basis. For the assurance of learning, it's going to be revised in such a way that it's not evaluated every semester, but then at least from an instructor point of view, I'm going to evaluate it through the portfolio of exams and through the portfolio of assignments that's going to be given to students. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I might reach out to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Because one issue in Jackson is because we're a new school and we're redesigning our curriculum. We don't really have a good way to sort of evaluate this. And I think American universities, they don't have key competencies, like it's not structured that way. And so sometimes we have good students, but sometimes we have like a mess. I don't know. But yeah, okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Other thoughts on
So may I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the way I communicate with my student is a lot simpler. I just say to them, look, my class is, one of the course that, help you to be a professional economist in the future. So the way my class is run is, I'm trying to approach this to the closer to, what real people doing real things in their real business, especially being professional economists. This is the thing that I always say. Then I give the assignment, give them, homework. What is it? What's it? In my class, we always bring them. I ask them to choose their own, group. So we make like 5 to 7 groups, and then they make a group meeting group in the WhatsApp, and we give them some topic and we discuss in the group. So they complain, but they do complaining or they say aha thing, like they say, oh, we find this the solution. So they try to work it out the problem as a group, or sometimes as individual. Depends what assignment is, whether it is an individual or group. But by this, then I'm trying to pursue this. I keep saying that my class is not easy. This is hard. I accept it is hard. So and then, but I'm trying to you know you know what's it what's it try to put in the smaller pieces that maybe like chewable. They can chew this bit by bit. And I keep pursuing. This is not easy, and I keep pursuing the look. So if you want to be economist, then we have to start loving mathematics. So statistics. So I pursued them. So because I know that the basic of, especially with the Indonesian education for the high school, which is it is not what we expect. So we persuade them to 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 do these things, doing it together. And as I said earlier, that I'm trying to, because my class is, so there will be on other courses that prior to my class. So that therefore there is no, I cannot avoid that. I have to have to go back to them. Look, this is what we did, what we learned in the previous classes. So then this is the basic idea about that. So you got the point. Or sometimes they get lost, but sometimes they say yeah, this is the remember. But then I keep connecting them with this. But then the evaluation will be every single week. They will have a quiz, pop quiz. They have they have group discussion, and seems to be most students complain that my class is too much assignment. But I said this is the way people doing in reality. You have to learn this as a process, not as just having midterm and final exam assessment. But yeah, this is what I do. But I don't think it's maybe ideal for the students. But the student after the semester finish, then they say, okay, this is what we find that they have a confidence that seems to be
You
they
can do it.
find the way to be a professional economist in the future. That's I don't know. I don't think what I'm doing is correct, but this is what I think is, as a compromise with what the students that they have, and then the real world that might be need them to be more than, I mean, a bit more ready to the reality of the real world, as being a researcher or being whatever, part of decision makers. I mean, more
No,
practical, more pragmatic.
yeah. No, thank you for sharing, Bagus. Actually, one comment that I have, it seems that you're very good at, again, so I've had the comment of actually telling students that the work is hard, or acknowledging that it's hard is good for them. Instead of saying like, no, this is easy, you're supposed to do this, which I have done in the past, and I don't do that anymore. Because it does give them a sense of oh, like, because students, remember, when things are hard, they tend to kind of blame themselves. And again, it goes back to that expectancies, like, why does this feel hard? I don't understand. Maybe I'm not smart enough or good enough to do this, and you don't want them to shut down. So the fact that you do tell students a lot that this is a hard thing to do, but we do it piece by piece, I think that's actually a good thing. In terms of assessments, like, students hate assessments. They so I have no, I have that issue too. We always have complaints on assessment. I don't have anything to sort of say that will make that better. But what I've seen in the past, and maybe you experience too, or others here experience too, when they do see the value and they do get the goal that they want, um, there is a sense of satisfaction of doing something very difficult in the end. And they don't see it until the end. But anyway, but other is does anyone wants to share other things about learning goals? Or we're good. We'll continue.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah,
I'll just
please.
share a little bit. So I think there are 2 points of view when we're discussing about learning goals or learning objectives. So first, in my experience as the one who was within the team to kind of construct these learning goals and learning objective in my previous university, it was such a tedious job, Ardina, because with I don't know how it's done in UGM, but in my previous university, we literally has like a set of LG and LOs, and we have to kind of map which course can achieve that LG and LO. And we had to
Oh,
do like
wow.
several FGDs to stakeholders, like to the lecturers, to the students. I forgot, I think the alumni as well, like to really map which course actually can achieve that learning goals and learning objective. For example, the ability to write written report might not be appropriate for statistics, something like that. So we need to look at the course that can achieve this LG. So it was such a tedious job in that sense. That's why I kind of refused to be the same team in the camp because it was such a not a traumatic, because yeah, it was such a tedious jobs, but because I was one of the I don't know, like the newbies who was forced into that team, so I had to do that. So yeah, in the sense that that as a team it was such a tedious job, but then I realized that as a lecturer who used this LG and LO, it really helps to kind of have that guideline when you teach. Okay, so for this course is what I have to achieve, and that's kind of build like the boundaries for me for the course, and to tell the students, okay, this is our goals. Like when you have the same set of goals, like you communicate the goals to your students, you kind of like go in the same directions, although yeah, some will deviate and stuff. But for me as a lecturer to finally understand the importance of these LG and LOs in my teaching, yeah, to set first to set the boundaries, secondly to kind of tell the students what's the purpose of each assignments and how those assignments actually relate to LG and LOs, like to achieve that LG and LOs. I think that really helps, especially for me. I'm a very structured person, so without a proper structure, I don't know like how to direct my class. But with LG and LOs, I think that's this
It helps.
really, yeah, it really helps.
Yeah, no, it is very helpful. And even for the students like structure. And I know UGM has a lot of large classes too. If you can have that structure in large classes and students know what to expect, they are more calm, I realize. And a lecturer that so I'm a course director for multiple classes. So I also help other senior lecturers who teach. And you can kind of see the difference when expectations are clear versus expectations not clear. Just so many more questions that you have to field. So thank you, Vaikisha, for sharing. And yes, it is kind of a hard task to make all the learning goals to fit the classes. I think, again, in Jackson, we're still trying to coordinate among our instructors and understand what each other's learning goal is, because we are just very new. So one thing that I do want to, I wonder if you sort of see this or not. I was looking at the learning goals and outcomes for the different, well, I only have like 2 syllabi, so I don't have a really good picture. But one thing that struck me that was interesting is sort of, some classes have a lot of just super high learning goals and outcomes, and sometimes just a lot. I don't know if you kind of notice, like, for example, in the humanities class, like the learning outcomes are kind of super specific up to kind of a topic level, you can say. And it's just kind of like the very basic one. So just being able to describe or maybe analyze a particular outcome, compared to sort of if you look at like the STEM one that is very higher level, like it requires multiple components to achieve this learning outcome. So one thing that I've realized when looking about learning outcomes, and again, I also realized this after reading a bit about from the research, from the pedagogical book, that learning outcomes or learning goals, because we are experts, there's an expert bias in us that doesn't see all the necessary skills necessary to to get an outcome, to get a learning outcome. So sorry, what do I mean by this? Let me just go to kind of this slide. So how do you get, let's say you chose an outcome and you want the students to achieve this. But to get mastery, the students must acquire components skills, practice integrating them, and know when to apply what they have learned, right? The big learning goals are good, and it's good to have them at the end of the class. But the question is, are you giving them enough component skills to sort of do them? And do you give them enough practice to integrate them? When you don't do this, which I have done in the past, and maybe still do, I still need to improve certain things, that they're not going to do as well at the outcome. And I'll give you some examples of this. And so this paragraph over here says, when expert instructors are blind to the learning needs of novice students, this is known as expert blind spot. So we'll have a discussion of, do you think the students have enough skills to achieve the learning outcomes? But let me give you an example of what an expert blind spot looks like. There's many in my experience, and maybe some of you have examples as well. So I had this really, really nice idea of, I wanted to have students to be able to play with different components of the solo growth model. So these are master students. So these are master students. I just make them did like the solo growth model, like just by hand. And then I gave them like this Excel sheet where we can have a discussion of we can have a discussion of how tell me the different ways countries can grow. And these are students without an economics background. So this is the first time they see the solo growth model and first time they see an economic way of thinking. So I give them this to the class. I thought, oh, this was a fun activity. And everyone was like, kind of discussing with each other and stuff. But then thinking back and hearing feedback afterwards, I realized I didn't do this very well. Because there are some component skills that are missing. Anyone can guess like what went wrong with that? Like, well, first, it was hard to get discussions to go. And second, I think students were frustrated for something else. Can anyone guess what potentially was the problem with this exercise? Maybe you have a similar experience or not. So the answer is actually very simple. It had to do with the Excel sheet. I did not explain enough. So first, I made it very difficult because I gave them examples of how to do the Excel sheet like in the first row, but then everything they had to fill in, assuming that, oh my, this is so easy, like this is so easy. But so 10 minutes, I've just been helping them with Excel instead of helping them with the equation. So next time when I do this exercise, I realize I need, and also there's the problem of, wait, they don't understand my question. So the next time I did it, it was much better. But so you see like the bias that I have is again, like they don't have the key component skills. That key component skill is missing. I'll give another example from my development class. So for my development class, I make them do growth accounting in R. And that's the first thing that I make them do. What's interesting about that class is I give them the code. So I tell them, look, when you start, things are hard, so you have to practice using a code. And I give them a code and I tell them, like, just copy that. When you do the homework, use the same code, just tweak it, right? And then I gave them the equation of growth accounting. That's the like first assignment that they do. Not good. Can anyone guess why that was not good idea? Also, it stressed them out a lot. So what did I do? So at first I realized one, students are scared, they shut down. Two, I'm actually asking a lot of them because one, they're learning R for the first time. Two, they're seeing the growth accounting equation for this first time. They're learning new commands. And also there's one component skill that's missing. As a person who codes and do data analytics, I know how to structure code. I know how to start. Like first you start by creating the variables that you need. Now that you have the variables, you can have the equation of growth decomposition. From there, you can start filtering and viewing data. Like students don't know when to start, right? So now I'm realizing, okay, component skills introduce one by one. I have a lecture just on equation, and then the code, I do this. I do 1.1, we need to create the growth rates. 1.2, we need to do this. 1.3, 1.4. And then during the homework, I said 1.1, you need to do this. 1.2, you need to do this. It's the same, but then later on I tweak it a little bit. But if you're thinking about remember, they need to acquire the different component skills and kind of know what they are. So at least now they can kind of practice again and again how to structure a code and how to structure an analytics code. They need practice, and then later on we'll do exercises in class of them using them in different situations. So now it was just much better. Like I had a class today where again people were discussing, but now they're finally discussing of, okay, how do I do this? And then they actually discuss like, what does this growth rate mean? I was able to push them a bit further because things are kind of structured. So thoughts? Anyone have other examples of
Yes, I
component
have.
skills that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
yes,
I?
sure. Yes, please.
Yeah. So this is just uh, my experience teaching my microeconomics class. So I don't say this is good, but you see, when I start giving them idea about why, what is it, the macroeconomics important, I give them example like GDP per capita as one of the measure of the macroeconomic performance. Then I bring in the idea of the gapminder of Rosling. And then this is really simple, just,
Yeah.
I bring them, like, the application from the Professor Rosling. This is how he did. This is his professor of medicine, and that makes sense. Connecting the GDP per capita with life expectancy, etc. Once they get the idea, then look, we can do this by a fancier way. We use R. Then I bring in the R script. That's give idea. This is we can produce very beautiful graphics these days. But I said to them, this is really hard to do this. Scripting in art is hard. So, but then this is I give them idea. This is
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the last part. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing. I mean, it's a combination, it seems, of
I give them what is it?
okay.
Homework. Okay, do a homework in the group. Then try to tweak this and tweak that. Then they give idea. But I keep saying that to them. This is hard. But after that, but I keep saying art is not always be. You need to comprehend this art. But I give you just idea that art can do this for the macroeconomics. But after that, I bring them always the easy opportunity like what I mentioned earlier. So using the EQs, that's a lot easier, but the graphics not as beautiful they are, but that's this delivered, But I said, look, but the main uh, goal is our class that you understand the topic. They are not, chasing the what is it, the tools, because I don't put R
Yeah.
as religion. I put R as,
Yeah.
tools, just an option. But this is the thing that's like, trying to bring the bridging from the ready to use application from clicking from one point to the others to bring to the R, and then bring the idea what's how the R thing, just very basic in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, how the grammar of the art. Then,
Mm-hmm.
you have to know this the grammar of the graphics, because the ggplot have the, I teach them this is
Yeah.
the,
It is
the
difficult.
basic grammar of the graphics in the art, and they start like it. So, but then in the presentation, the student can choose whatever tools they want to use. They can use Excel, Stata, R, if use whatever the other
Mm-hmm.
nine, so they can do that. But basically,
Yeah.
this I don't know, but seems to be my students seems to be like that kind of idea.
Yeah. I think I mean, you have a good way of motivating them. Once they get that hump out of the different component skills, if you're able to, if they are able to get them, it does become smooth sailing. So it is sort of nice. Um, does anyone have, and thank you for sharing, but does anyone have I'm wondering like a missing component skill that doesn't have to do with like coding? Because there's also other component skills that for larger tasks that it might be an issue. But if not, I can also go to the next slide because I have a question. Let's see if we can, let's do sort of like a chat situation. I'm going to ask you a question, and if you can put in some examples in a chat. So I was talking to Bueni before, and one of the problems I think that she mentioned, people usually have difficulty with are these longer term projects or like final projects. It either could be a data analysis type project or a final paper. These are actually the type of projects where there are expert blind spots because we're so used to thinking like, oh, this is easy to structure things this way. Can people, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, type in some possible blind spots when you're doing a big project as a student. Let's see if you can think of any since everyone's an expert here. I'll give you a minute or two to think. Or let me frame the question in a different way, because I know a lot of people do have final projects. Which part of the final project you realize the students were the weakest?
Yeah, Ardina. So
Mhm.
in my experience, I think most students, yeah, again, apart from they don't know, sometimes they don't have very basic of Excel or other tools, but
Mhm.
the most crucial thing is that they are weak in the making analysis. And when they
Okay.
produce something, and so in most cases, how they interpret the result, how to analyze the result is quite shallow, and they want
Mhm.
to just to jump to the conclusion, like I don't know, whoever teach them, you just see the probability when it's below 0.05, it is good. Something like that. They're just becoming very shallow. But then, how when we can persuade them to think more, deeper in making analysis and making sense whether the result is at least if they have to go back to the theory whether at least the sign is positive or negative, or that there's sometimes they don't want to think that very deep. But maybe this is a challenge because maybe because our culture as Indonesians, we are not trained to be critical to things. Maybe.
Well, I mean, you're true that, I mean, even here, it is very hard to, critical thinking overall is just very difficult to sort of teach. But thank you, Pak Bagus. I was trying to write down things that you say in the chat. Pak Wisnu also mentioned that dissemination and making story out of the results is the most common. The motivation and data, Pak Rian, students tend to jump to data without clearness of the data, why they need to do the analysis. Okay. So I have a question, and I don't know if this is easy or hard. So us as instructors, we know how to analyze data very well, or motivate a question. So I'm trying to see if you can think about, so all of these tasks are very, very difficult tasks. If a student never analyzed a data set before, all they can do is replicate, right? Or just like what Bagus mentioned, all they can do is just, I think my instructor wants this, so let me just write it down. Or I see it before this way, let me just write it down. But again, it's because their connection or that component skill is missing, right? So let me give an example. So I have this exact same issue when I was doing my development class, right? Students don't know how to necessarily, for example, brainstorm a question properly, right? When you ask the students, okay, choose any topic that you want, write a paper about it. There are some component skills that are missing there. Component skill 1, how do I know if a question is answerable? How do I know if like as researchers, what do? We find a topic based on the literature, like we know how the question connects to the literature. Second, we can find data and we can see how the data is connected to the question. And then in our heads, we think about, oh, then this is like a table or a graph that I want to analyze and I want to do this, right? We're trained to do that. We know how to do that. If you never mention this to your students and you just say, find a topic, blah, 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 do this, like they don't have this reference point. So I think, so this is something that we realized in multiple classes that we had, and we're still trying to figure out how to do this, but we came up with a couple of strategies that might have worked. Well, or they do work to an extent. So one, for example, I have a class to do the brainstorming with them, and I give them like point by point, like choose a question. I think this is something that I did for Mbak Kisha's class last year at UGM. This is my worksheet. We're going to do 3 things. 1, tell me a question. 2, tell me why it's important. 3, if you want to answer this question, like what data set do you need? And then 4, can you brainstorm for me like a table? And then ideally, you just go around and ask students, okay, explain me your reasoning. And then you can tell them, why is this reasoning wrong? Like maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you want to do something else. Or then you realize like, oh, the data's not there. We have to change this question. So it becomes a bit more structure and they they're able to kind of think that way. So students don't know how to create these outputs. And I think sometimes as experts, we are kind of blind to the different component skills that you sort of need, or the different connections that you sort of need. These are hard concepts to teach, but hopefully you can kind of think a little bit like, did I give them enough guidance or not? I just wanted to kind of look at what Pak Gilang and Bu Eni added. Determine the empirical strategy. Another blind spot, which I've done in the past. So for example, I tell students like, okay, give me a graph and do whatever analysis that you want. And then they gave me like really weird analysis, like regressions that I have no idea how you came up with this regression. And but again, I didn't give them enough guidance to like come up with good analysis at the time. And when you have like kind of an open strategy this way, and you don't teach them the missing component skills, you get like, and then I have to fix afterwards, like, oh no, you can't do regression this way. So yes, the component skills they're missing. And then Pak Gilang mentioned the biggest challenge is tend to connect two variables of interest. And students don't start with a theoretical framework, right? Right, again, so again, you can make a brainstorming sheet however you want. I think for me, I focus a lot on a data, but maybe if you start with, okay, framework, and then from this framework, like what kind of questions or what kind of variables interest you, and then tell them to write the question, make them explain it in class, and then say like, okay, so why do you choose these variables? How do you connect it to the framework? Then they start thinking, and you're also teaching them like come back to the framework. So I think you do need to have this session, otherwise it's not going to work very well. But I think it's very helpful for the students, because again, what makes studying hard as a student, or imagine when you were doing your PhD and your professor is like, write your dissertation without any guidance. You know how difficult that was, trying to just figure out and replicate from other papers. That's the same thing that's happening with the students. Okay, good. So we can come back to that discussion a little bit later. We can come back to the discussion a little bit later. One, I was just reading what Pak Gilang mentioned. Yes, it's always interesting to learn how their research questions evolve throughout the semester. Yeah, and it always changes, and they have a panic mode in the middle when their research question has to change. But we'll come back to this. I actually do have a lot more time for discussion at the very end of this session, and I'm going to force more people to talk through some group exercise at the end. But let me just say a little bit about backward design and give you a bit more examples. So we talked about learning goals, and we talk about missing component skills. So remember that there are learning goals at the end of the class, but you can also have learning goals for each lecture. Like for each lecture, what do you want the students to take out of the class? And actually, that's how I think about making my concept maps. Like by the end of the class, what do I want them to do? And I actually give them like at the end, like a study guide. Like by the end, if you want to study again, you have to be able to answer this, this, this. It does make them more focused in their studying. But now that you have those learning goals, and in the beginning, some of you were mentioning like, how do I choose case studies, or how do I make assessments? So the idea of backward design is, the definition is what the word is. You start from the end. So what's your learning goal? Determine acceptable evidence of that, and then plan learning experience based on the learning goal. So exactly what Mbak Kisha mentioned she was sort of doing in the first session, right? So you've done this, create assessments that measure progress towards outcomes, And then you also design activities that prepare learning to perform well on the assessments. I found this way of course designing, once you do it, it is actually easier because sometimes when there's so many information that you can put into a topic, and sometimes it's not structured, but with the learning goals, it does help you structure things a bit better. And when you're creating assessments, so I think a lot of you do this already. When you're creating assessments, you can find assessments that really push towards that outcome. So because I realize that component skill is sort of missing and I want to force my students to brainstorm, I do have an assessment for the brainstorming, which is before the proposal. So they brainstorm stuff first and then they have a proposal assignment as well. So these component skills you can start putting into the assessments themselves. So I want to just kind of give you like examples from two classes that I have, two different classes. One is sort of like a master's econ. Well, both of them are master's econ class. But I kind of use backward design to design the course. And then I'm very excited to hear your examples. Because this is a master's class, and also these are students, a lot of them did not like econ. Um, they know it's important, but I had one cohort that was just very, very angry at economists. I don't know why. But since I've shifted the way I teach, I don't get kind of that anger anymore, which is very interesting. So these are policy students. They care about real world applications, like what Bagus tries to push. And so I only teach half the class. And so I just create sort of 3 modules. Technically, I want to teach them solo or economic growth. I want them to teach measurements. Measurements is always boring for students. And then I teach them like business cycles, so the ISLM FE framework. But I tell students, look, my goal for you is you are able to analyze an output of interest. So with each case, I'm going to give you a particular output that I want you to debate at the end. Okay? But to be able to get to these stuff, you need to learn these core lessons. You need to be able to do the solo growth model. For measurement, you need to do this. And then business cycles, you need all of this. But the goal is we're going to look at an actual output. And again, with real output, students are kind of excited for this. So this is the output that I have for the first module. I tell them, I want you to tell me if these recommendations make sense or not. Are these good recommendations based on what you know about the limitations of the model, and would you give the same recommendations? And usually policy students, if it's some sort of the debate, they're very excited. Now, I tell them also like, okay, to be able to get to nuances and critics, we're going to have to go through a few things. So one, I give them the math for solo growth model. I tell them the math is important to understand the components. 2, so I have the Excel sheet that I modified and make it easier. I want you to understand how economists use models to make predictions because these are policy students. Then we're going to look at an actual Excel sheet from the World Bank. So they have like a big Excel sheet where it's like a solo growth model on steroids, with so many different components. But because they know how to use Excel now and they know how models work, when we go to that model, even if it's complicated, they can connect it back to that. And then once they have that, we can have the policy recommendation discussion and then nuances and critiques. Okay. This took me 2 weeks to do. So 4 classes. It's long. Some of my colleagues don't agree with how long it takes, but the students do understand the material a bit better. So then I have to think about what type of assessments fit all of these components. So basic solo growth model, you need to know the mechanics. So having a homework of solving solo growth equations is good. So I have a couple of homework on that. My end goal is I want them to be able to critique things, and they have to read the documents. But again, critiquing things also, they need to be able to sort of hear people critiquing things as well. So I have an assignment where they just listen to an hour debate by World Bank economists on like their model, and then make them kind of discuss like through like a Google Doc where they can write their comments and comment on each other, to see whether they agree or not agree, right? And then I make them read the report and again make comments on the report. And I tell them that we're going to have a debate at the end. So what I was doing was I was just filling in all of the skill component in the end, just so that they have everything to have a really good discussion. Okay, so the great final piece of I probably did some mistakes along the way, but I was very happy with the end product, because now that the skill components are there, they have practice, they hear people talk about the model. I had an entire class where I tell them, this is a discussion class. I'm only going to talk 5 minutes in the beginning. Afterwards, you are all going to talk on your own. And then I set up like, this is the norm of how we're going to do the discussion. You don't have to raise your hand, be mindful, but just start speaking. And then I give them a question. And what was amazing with that class is that, oh, and I also tell them that thinking time is okay. Think for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then here's the question, and then you can just go. So the students did talk for 45 minutes on their own without me saying anything, which has never happened before in my life when I was teaching. And what's also interesting is that more than half of the class talked. Close to like 70–80% of the students take turns talking. That experience made me realize when you do have the skill components done well, the connections done well, and you set up the environment, you can get that discussion situation that you want. So I think that was just kind of a really mind-blowing experience for me and the students too, because they were confused at the end. They were like, we never had a discussion like this. So again, these components are very, very important to sort of put in place. Sorry, that took a while, but one last question, and I want to hear kind of your thoughts. This is a midterm project for an upper level master's master's class. And we created all of our other assignments based on this midterm project. So we asked them to write a policy trade memo. So we asked them to write a policy trade memo. Let me see if I can pull up the entire assignment. I'm gonna put this down. The first time we did this, our results were terrible. I'm not going to lie. Oh, 1 second. Let's exit this. So the first time we did this, I can't seem to move this. Sorry, 1 sec. Okay, I'm gonna share this. So this is the actual assignment. It's long. It gives sort of the executive summary, economic background performance, export assessment, recommendation. They have to write sort of, it's like a typical economic report. But we says here that there's 3 tools that you need in this class to do this assignment: a development accounting tool, analyzing creative comparative advantage, and then do a gravity model. So we know that this is our goal that we want. We know that this is the type of analysis that we want. And so when we were designing the course, the topics were easy. We do development accounting, we do trade comparative advantage, and then we do gravity models. And in each of the assignments, we make them do this. So when they get to the end of the assignment, they already have all the component skills to be able to sort of do this assessment. The first time we did it, it was still terrible. But then the second time we did this, we did 2 things. First, we give them examples of previous years, and then we did a workshop discussing like why was the previous years not as good as it can be and what they should do. Just adding that one class, the students' essays are much, much better, and they were much more motivated because before they didn't know what needs to be done. But now things are a bit better. But anyway, I gave you sort of these 2 examples. I gave you these 2 examples. I'm curious what you think. Do you see any potential like component skills that you were missing potentially in your previous classes, or something that you identify and you realize, okay, this is missing, I need to add this lesson? And if not, it's okay. We can go to a last discussion prompt. So some of you has mentioned sometimes it's hard to get people to talk. So a couple of, I will talk about this tomorrow, but a couple of techniques that you could do to get people to talk is, 1, make sure that you give students thinking time, because it does take a bit to think. 2, there's something called think, pair, share, which people use a lot here, and maybe you have heard of this and use this. Think, pair, share means like have the students talk with each other first before telling you. Usually when they talk with somebody else and they come up with a problem, an answer that someone has sort of agreed upon, they're more willing to talk and you'll get more answers that way. The other thing that I kind of tend to do is I do a lot of breakout groups where I make them write things on slides. So, which is what you guys are going to do. Hopefully that's okay if I make you do this. So for example, in class, for development economics class, I just teach them about the different stakeholders in development, so the iron development triangle. And then I also teach them like these new terminologies of what affects growth. I have a slide saying like, these are all the terminologies that you've just learned. This is a case study. Give me, analyze this case study with some of the words that you see. I make them go to a slide, and then they have to type, and then we come back and we discuss. When you give them time to discuss, when you give them things to connect with, usually they talk, and they talk a lot. So let's see if this works. So I'm gonna try to do breakout groups. I don't know if Docent UGM is usually doing breakout groups, but I want you to, as a group, like choose a class that you want, or a topic or an assignment. See if you can assign a learning goal or learning outcome for kind of either that class or just a particular topic. And I want you to see what type of activities or assignments you can come up with. It can just be a class that you already have. You have like something nice example that you can share with everyone. But I think it's really nice if we can hear from different professors about what they are doing. Does this make sense? Can I do this for 10 minutes and then we come back and just sort of discuss everyone's ideas? Okay, good. If you're expecting this to not be interactive, unfortunately, this is a little bit interactive and discussion. But yeah, but okay. So I'm gonna make you into groups. Can everybody go to bit.ly econ teaching? You will see a Google slide. Choose whatever slide you want, and then make notes. And then that will help you present when we come back after 10 minutes. And I'm happy to move around to see what, if anyone needs help. Okay? Okay, so how do let me see. I haven't used Zoom in a while. How do we get people into groups again? Let's see. Am I able to do this, or does the secretary do this?
Ooh, good question.
Because I don't see an option.
Yeah, I think the admin you can do that. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Can the admin do groups of like, so we have 16, so maybe groups of like 5 groups in total? Or actually, let's do 4 groups in 4 groups. Yeah, sorry, I do this a lot during Zoom and during the pandemic, and now I'm realizing I don't have admin control. But any questions? Is it clear what I'm asking you to do?
Who is the admin then? Sorry.
Mbak Vindi.
Mbak Vindi,
Oh,
Pak.
Mbak Vindi?
Yeah,
Let me.
I have helped to make a 4 breakout rooms,
Okay.
yep.
and then maybe can everyone see the room 1, 2, 3, and 4?
No. No,
No.
I cannot.
not yet.
Jadi
Where is
di-assign
that, Bu?
aja, Bu. Kayak langsung.
Yeah.
Oke. Yes, thank you, Bu.
Okay. If it doesn't work, I think we all might have to
Sorry.
just work individually and then come back to it. Oh, let's see if it works in like 3 minutes. If it doesn't, then I do want to give you thinking time. It is better if we could do it as a group to discuss, but um, if not, we could share. One person can just do one slide, and then we do kind of a discussion at the end.
I will make you a co-host so you can see.
Oh, yes, thank you. If you can make me co-host.
Oh, ini dia. Ya. Mbak Vin, harusnya host yang bikin co-host ya.
Iya, Bu Eni.
Ini Mbak Ardina tolong dijadiin co-host.
Iya, abangkan sebentar.
Iya, makasih.
This reminds me of Zoom days of oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Oh, I see. Um, okay. I think I have everybody in a room. Oke. Pak Rimawan bisa gabung or nggak
No,
muncul?
I was inside and then nobody around in my
Oh,
group.
udah ada 3 Pak di dalam.
Okay.
Udah, ya, ya, I think.
Ooh, where is that?
I can also move you if you want a different
Okay.
group of lecturers. Um, oh, okay. Um, okay. Oh, baik. Pak Bagus and Pak Gilang, maybe I'll. So let me join. Terima kasih, Mbak Vindi. Oh, hello, Pak Elan. Pak Bagus, do you guys want to go into a breakout room or you guys are good? Okay, I'm assuming good.
Mbak Ardina, apakah butuh bantuan saya?
Oh, I think it's okay.
Oke.
Ya, makasih, makasih.
Ya.
welcome back.
Thank you.
I see one group missing missing any. So let's see. Let me share the Google slide. So welcome back, everyone. I know that was very fast, and because of technical difficulty, we lost a little bit of time. But I want to give the opportunity for people to present what they were discussing. And I want another group to kind of comment. But I'm going to try to keep, if you can present in 2 minutes, 2 minutes, sort of kind of the main, like if you have to summarize the discussion, like what would it be? And I'm going to ask another group to tell in 2 minutes again, tell me something that they like about this group's idea, and if there are any potential component skills that are missing that could be added in an assessment or a lecture. So maybe we can start with group one. Um, Anyone from group one wants to talk to explain? Yes, please, whoever would like.
Siapa?
Or maybe because Mbak Gisha talked a lot, maybe how about
enggak,
someone else?
Mbak Evi, tadi ada Bu Evi sama Mbak Dini.
Okay. Mbak Dini or Bu Efi, do you want to take charge and summarize kind of what you guys talked about? Or Mbak Gisha?
Back to Kisah.
Sorry,
Doang.
aku sambil FGD soalnya, jadi aku ini
Oh, right, you have to go, yeah.
No,
yeah.
it's fine. Nggak apa-apa. Jadi aku paling nggak bisa turn on aja. Ini
Okay.
on camera. So it's actually combination from two courses. Ardina, one is Ibu NFE's course. The first LG, that's the introduction, introduction to economics. So we took one of the LG. Student who graduate will be knowledgeable in their approach to economic analysis. And that LG has 3 LOs. Maybe tadi bukan LG ya Bu ya, kompetensi goals ya.
Yes, it's called CG, Competency School.
Oh, kompetensi goals. 3 LOs, and for the assignment, that reflects the 3 LOs itu dari penugasan from assignments and then exams. That's what's written in the syllabus actually, Ardina. And the second LG is I took from one of the LGs in my development economics class about the oral presentations competency goals. And at least there are 2 objectives. Students are able to structure their presentation coherently, and students are able to use the media effectively in delivering their presentations. So the assignment that I use to kind of assess these LGs is, of course, using weekly discussions and presentation, because in presentation they have to prepare their own presentation materials. So the media that they use will be assessed from that.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing. Can someone from another group make a comment on what either a learning goal or LO that they find that they really liked and explain why, or potentially have a comment on a component skill that they think might be very important for one of these learning goals or outcomes?
So what is the courses, Kisah?
Development Economics and Introduction to Econ.
Apa, Mbak?
Oh, Which
Introduction.
one is
Satu sama pembangunan satu.
which
Oh,
one is the introduction one? Is it the bottom one introduction or the top one?
The top one.
Ah, okay. Okay. So one thing that I do like is actually the fact that a class has sort of presentation as its learning goal. I've talked to some students in the master's program, and they actually really want to do more presentation skills because they work with a lot of policymakers afterwards, do a lot of diplomacy work. So presentation is a skill that students really care about. Um, I'm curious in terms of like assessments and discussions. I found that students are not good sometimes with presentations. And um, so I try to give them a lot of guidance in terms of how many minutes and what your presentation slides kind of look like. That sometimes is a component skill that's sort of missing. But other thoughts besides my own, Pak Wisnu?
Yes, so for the second part of LO is gonna be like little bit difficult in a way that student will argue every times like about your objective gradings on presentations, like how what is your
Mm,
coherence presentation is, what is your media effective presentation is. So what my suggestion is like when you
mm,
what is the making like a LO into like a something that manageable and also easy to grade is you introduce peer review or like a multitude of metrics that mentioning this is what is what is coherence and this is what we call it media effectively. And I will suggest this is not like a weekly discussion because it's gonna be really hard to manage on that aspect if you putting that aspect in for grader or TAs become like another issue because my experience sometimes TA and then like a graders is really close to student and then like what we receive as a professor is just like everything get an A on the presentations. So that I think my comment for the group one.
So may I?
no. Mhm. Yes, please.
So again, in my class, uh, in the week 7 and 14, student will make a group presentation. Each group will present 10 minutes. So we limit the presentation to be 10 minutes. Then we keep saying, look, you need to learn elevated test. So in 10 minutes, you need to be able to deliver your idea. As close as what you want to say. And after that, in 5 minutes, we encourage other students to raise questions, comment on this. But before the presentation, we what is it? What is the coach? Is it? I think either we coach or we help them to prepare the presentation and being
Hmm.
like kind of the sparring partner for them to make the presentation, that's including the flow of the presentation, the idea, how they do that. So in our case, by having that two-time presentation, so they feel they have confidence that, oh, we know how to present this in 10 minutes, not in the half an hour or 1 hour, just 10 minutes. And then they have to, another student also have to be able to raise question or comment in a very short manner. Yeah, let's say
Hmm.
maximum a minute. By this, the asking, by this, then
Hmm.
we help them to focus what they are going to say rather than they say mumbling here and there. I don't know, but
Hmm.
by
Yeah.
this, by this seems to be student because they don't do it alone. They do it in groups. And at the end of the class, we ask them, we give them, a marking. Who is in the group is, the most contributor. Who is
Hmm.
the free riders? And they are honest. They will tell who is
Yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
uh,
I
yeah,
mean, I do the same, yeah, but
yeah, that's, by this, that encourage them at the end, what they are concerned, they are very pragmatic too. At the end,
yeah.
they want to be the effort to be shown in the market. Then I keep saying to my student, look, your mark is you who decide, not me. What my function is to help to put your things in the Excel. So then and the formula. So it's your mark is yours. So you decide what it is.
Thank you for all the comments. Maybe we'll I do want to be mindful for everybody's time. So maybe we could continue the discussion tomorrow, but I do just want to just allow one person. Is it okay if I just allow one person 2 minutes just to kind of explain this, and then we'll close it? Because you already wrote a lot, so I feel like you should say something. Bu Eni, did you wanted to say something?
Okay, this is for the statistics too. The
see.
learning goal says student who graduate will be proficient in using data and statistical software to solve economic problems. And then we determine the learning outcomes. Student who graduate will apply appropriate modern statistical software to gather and analyze data to provide a solution to economic problems. So there will be a group project with the peer review, and then we provide a group of 3 members, and then there will be a topic that assigns to each group, and they will collect relevant data and conduct both time series analysis or cross-sectional analysis. And then they will analyze the data and identify key insight and present the finding to the classmate. And finally, submission requirements. We suggest each group must submit a report detailing their analysis, and each group must also review and provide a feedback on report from 2 other groups.
No, thank you for sharing. I do like how things are just broken down into pieces. It's easier to figure out what component skills you might need to kind of include. But Pak Wisnu was also mentioning things, and Pak Bagus too, about assessment that we didn't have time to sort of discuss, but maybe it's something that we can touch on a little bit tomorrow. But again, I'm 3 minutes over. I want to be mindful to everyone's time. Thank you all for participating. I hope it's helpful in some way. I hear like a lot of people have been using some of the techniques, or most of the techniques already. It is just kind of good so that you know that these are techniques that researchers have said worked in the classroom. And hopefully you hear from different people, different ideas that maybe you can try. Thank you.
Okay.
Bu
Yeah, so thank you, Mbak Ardina, for sharing with us. So we will see again tomorrow. And okay, so have a nice day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
Have a
you.
good
Thank
day,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
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 See you tomorrow.